How's it going, everybody? I hope you're all having a good day. We're going to start this video out with a lot of games that I got from eBay. As you can see, this cost somebody $10.50 to ship, but the entire lot only actually cost $25 to buy. There are 6 games in here, and they range from Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and Nintendo 64. And out of all the 6 games, there's only one that I previously owned, and my copy was cart only, and this one comes with its case, so it'll be a nice upgrade. And here's what it looks like when we open the package. First up is Ren Stimpy Vidiots for the Super Nintendo. Now, I could have sworn that I owned this game because I still have nightmares of playing it when I was a kid, but I think that the one I actually owned was the Game Boy version and not the Super Nintendo one. Next up is Green Dog the Beach Surfer Dude. At one point, someone tried to sell this game for $21.99, and then many years later, went all the way down to $2.99. Here is King of the Monsters 2. Now, this is one of the games I was most interested in because I'm a huge SNK fanboy, and I've actually never played this version of the game, and at one point, they were selling this game for $3.99. Next up is Pink Goes to Hollywood. Now, I know almost nothing about the Pink Panther with the exception of he used to be printed on the insulation of my parents' attic. Here is Hydro Thunder, which is one of those ridiculous over-the-top speedboat racing arcade games. And finally, Garfield Caught in the Act. Now, this is the only game of the lot that I had previously owned. And that's it, so let's clean these games up and take a look at all of them. And here it is all cleaned up. Now, this game didn't look bad to begin with. It was in pretty nice shape. It's just kind of been neglected and dusty. Now, the Ren and Stimpy games have never really been that loved and well received on the Super Nintendo, but they really do nail the style of the show really well. And there's quite a bit of them. I mean, there's 4 games alone on the Super Nintendo. So there's a lot to go through if you like Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy Vidiots was published by THQ and released in 1993 for the Super Nintendo and Game Boy. Ren and Stimpy are trapped in their TV show and need to escape back to the real world. The game plays out in multiple chapters based on 4 episodes of the show: The Boy Who Cried Rat, In the Army, Stimpy's Invention, and Marooned. Each chapter is played as either Ren or Stimpy and contains multiple levels involving many characters and songs from the show. The art direction is also incredibly faithful to the source material. Vidiots is the first Ren and Stimpy game released for the Super Nintendo, followed by Fire Dogs and Time Warp in 1994, and finally Buckaroos in 1995. And here's that copy of Hydro Thunder. Now, you can see that this card has seen much better days, especially that label, but it does work, and this game is just a blast. I mean, you just go hundreds of miles an hour down different tracks with different boats, and you just pick up boosts and just try to fight off everyone else to be first. It's ridiculous. Hydro Thunder was developed and published by Midway and released in 1999 for arcades and Sega Dreamcast, and then later for N64 and PlayStation in 2000. Hydro Thunder is a super boat racing game that races 13 different turbocharged thunderboats on 13 of the most treacherous watercourses imaginable. The home console releases contain bonus boats and tracks that are not included in the arcade version, as well as 2 or 4 player split screen. Hydro Thunder is also part of the Midway Arcade Treasures 3 compilation that was released in 2005 for PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube. And here's Green Dog all cleaned up. Now, out of all the games in this lot, this is the one that I actually judged by the cover because I believe it was the only one that I actually hadn't played. I was just like, I want to sell or trade or get rid of this game as soon as I can because I'm never going to play it. I was partially confusing this game with Lesser the Unlikely on the Super Nintendo, but this game is solid, like rock solid. And I'm going to leave the stickers on here because it kind of reminds me of the rental store that I used to go to when I was a kid. But in general, yeah, I mean, I shouldn't have judged this by the cover, and I did, and I really shouldn't have, but this will make a nice addition to the Genesis collection. Green Dog the Beach Surfer Dude was developed and published by Sega and released in 1992 for the Genesis and 1993 for the Game Gear. The game centers around Green Dog, who is washed up on an island after wiping out while surfing. After Green Dog wakes up, he discovers that he has a cursed necklace around his neck that requires finding 6 pieces of Aztec treasure to remove. You will jump, swing, fly, skateboard, and kill enemies with your frisbee as you travel through the Caribbean islands. There are also some basic pseudo side-scrolling shoot-'em-up segments in between levels. Although the game world has a serious art style, Green Dog and his enemies have comical-looking sprites that stand out from their surroundings. And here's King of the Monsters 2 all cleaned up. Now, after getting this game here, I was about to trade my Super Nintendo copy just to find out that the Super Nintendo version and the Sega Genesis version are actually not the same game. The Super Nintendo one is much more in line with the Neo Geo arcade game, where the Genesis one was reprogrammed by Takara when it was brought to the home console. Now, Takara was responsible for bringing quite a few Neo Geo arcade games to the home console like Fatal Fury, King of the Monsters, Fatal Fury 2, and Samurai Showdown, and even though none of their ports are arcade perfect, they did what they could with what they had. King of the Monsters 2 was developed and published by SNK and released in 1992 for the Neo Geo AES and MVS, 1993 for the Super Nintendo, and 1994 for the Sega Genesis. The game takes place 3 years after the first and changes the genre from a fighting game to a side-scrolling beat-em-up. There's also a change in the amount of playable characters from 6 in the original to only 3 in the sequel. Although there are many adjustments, the Super Nintendo version of the game follows the arcade release very closely. The Genesis version, however, was reprogrammed by Takara and changed considerably. It goes back to the fighting style of the original game, allows you to play as 9 characters including bosses, and adds new attacks and levels. And here's Garfield Caught in the Act. Now, I wish I was able to tell you guys that this is an amazing hidden gem that needs to be tracked down right now, but unfortunately that isn't exactly the case. Although the art direction and the controls are great, there's too many things going on in this game that make it very frustrating very quickly. At least they didn't go to the extent of like putting timers in levels, but I would say pick it up if you see it cheap, but don't go hunting for it unless you're a die-hard Garfield fan. Garfield Caught in the Act was developed and published by Sega and released in 1995 for the Genesis and Game Gear as well as PC in 1996. The game is a platformer and centers around Garfield being sucked into the TV and trying to escape. Some of the levels are parodies of classic movies like Casablanca and Count Slobula, while others play off of historic figures like Orangebeard and Cleopatra. The Genesis version of the game features 6 levels with another 3 able to be downloaded from the Sega channel, dubbed Garfield the Lost levels. These 3 Sega channel levels are actually lost content. The Game Gear version includes the original 6 Genesis stages as well as 2 from the Lost levels, and the PC version includes the original 6 Genesis levels as well as the final Lost level. The in-game sprites were hand-drawn by Jim Davis himself. And finally, here's Pink Goes to Hollywood. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I honestly know nothing about the Pink Panther. All I know is he was on the installation of my parents' attic. I know the theme song, and I also know that within the past 15 years, I believe they put out a couple movies, none of which I saw. I will say that this game does nail the art direction and the music. The theme here sounds great. This game in general, though, does get very frustrating. There is another version on the Super Nintendo that was developed by another company that may be a better experience. But like I said about Garfield, unless you're a die-hard fan of Pink Panther, do not bother tracking this game down. Pink Panther and Pink Goes to Hollywood was published by Tecmo and released in 1993 for the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. Pink hits Hollywood to audition for his next movie and ends up going through multiple MGM movie sets to avoid Inspector Clouseau. Tecmo employed two different companies to finish their game. Because of this, both versions of the game are considerably different. The Genesis version equips you with an extending boxing glove as your main weapon, whereas you have an insect sprayer on Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo version starts you out in each level with a different hat that matches the stage setting and grants you an extra hit, whereas the Genesis version uses a life bar. Even though both have a hub world that takes place in the kitchen in order to access levels, they are laid out in completely different formats. And here's a final overview of all the games that were in that lot. With the exception of Hydro Thunder, this stuff was all in really nice shape, easily worth the $25. eBay is still a great place for finding games. Just search for newly listed buy it nows or ending soonest auctions and you can make out pretty well over there. So recently my buddy Samurai Sam went to London, and besides just seeing the regular sites, he said he was going to check out a local game store, and I had just mentioned, hey, if you see any PAL exclusive Master System games and you wouldn't mind bringing them home, I would be appreciative of it. And this is the one he ended up bringing me home. This is Alien 3. You guys know I've been on an Alien 3 kick very recently. We looked at the Genesis version a couple videos ago. We looked at the Super Nintendo version last video, and we're about to look at the Master System version in a minute. This game was complete. It came to £9.99, which is about $13 when translated, and I couldn't be happier to have this. Alien 3 was developed by Probe Software, published by Acclaim Entertainment, and released in 1992 for the Sega Master System. Yet again, we find Ripley killing aliens and rescuing prisoners against the clock in a mashup between Aliens and Alien 3. The Sega Master System version of the game is very similar to the Sega Genesis release, with the big differences being scaled down graphics, a zoomed out on-screen area, fewer levels, and the ability to play two-player simultaneous co-op. The Game Gear version of Alien 3 is identical to the Sega Master System game with the two-player co-op removed. The Master System version was exclusively released in PAL territories. So in the last video we checked out this exact same pawn shop, and there was a comment on that video that asked how much the PS4 and Xbox One stuff was, because I didn't really go into it in much detail, and it was a good question because I should have gone into it in detail, so we're back here to check it out. Over here, this is the section where it's some of the older games, Xbox and PS2, and here's a copy of Constantine on the Xbox for $1. I think it started at 10 or 5 and it got marked all the way down to $1, so anything 10 or under is buy one get one free, so I'm definitely going to pick this up because I don't have it. And here's the PS4 stuff. There's Battlefield 1 for $20. They got Battlefield 4 and 5. Borderlands The Handsome Collection. There's Destiny 2, which was actually free for a while. Best Buy gave it away. And even when Blizzard gave it away, I still didn't even want it. Here's Call of Duty World War II for $24. Dishonored down there for $20. Call of Duty Ghosts next to it. Dragon Ball FighterZ for, what does it say, $35? Yep. Been marked down from $45. There's FIFA 16 for $10. Here's Fallout 76 for $54. What I think that they do here is they just go to the GameStop website and probably price whatever they have it at there. Remember that all these games are buy two get one free, and they get cheaper the longer that they've been here. There's For Honor for $17. There's Horizon Zero Dawn for $34. Here is Mass Effect Andromeda for $22. I explained it in the previous video how the pricing works here, so I'll link that at the end. There's Overwatch for $34. Rugby 15. There's Thief down there is at $10. And here's Until Dawn. I actually loved playing through that game. Here it is for only $10, so that means it qualifies for the buy one get one free. So at $5, it's easily worth it for this game. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 is here for $54. I know that game's a recent release. There's Evolve down there, which is dead. It's been dead for a long time. Devil May Cry HD Collection, which is a nice pickup. Another copy of Destiny. Darksiders. There's Dragon Ball Xenoverse. Elder Scrolls Online. I'm pretty sure that game's actually still going. Fallout 76 for, was that $50? Here's Forza Horizon 4 for $34. There's some Lego games down there like Lego Marvel Superheroes for $10 and Lego Jurassic World. Madden 15. What else we got down there? Mafia 3. I love the second one. I never played the third one. Here's some sports games. There's Need for Speed Payback. Prey 2, which I kept meaning to play, but I never got around to it. There's Garden Warfare 2, Resident Evil 7, which I believe I picked up in the third episode of the show on the PS4. Here is Red Dead Redemption 2 for $54. Again, I think they just price this stuff off what GameStop is selling their used games for. Thief, Titanfall 2 again. There's that Ninja Turtles game. Steep, Rhyme, Sunset Overdrive. The newest South Park game is there. And here's the retro stuff. Now, I've never actually looked at the Game Boy games that are behind the glass, but there's a copy of Jimmy Connor's Tennis for the Game Boy, which is said to be one of the rarest games for the system in North America, and it's priced here at only $5, which means it also qualifies for the buy one, get one free. And here's the box and everything that was in there, and they're all 10-footers. Somebody picked through this at one point and just didn't know that that game was expensive. Now, Jimmy Connor's is a 10-footer in every sense of the word, but it's a special kind of 10-footer. It's what we call a gouger. It's an industry term. It's a game that nobody can ever find when they're completing their collection, so it's been price gouged to hell and back. And it sells regularly for over $100, and also if you put it in between two collectors, they'll gouge each other's eyeballs out for it. In every other reality, you wouldn't even pick this game up on the sidewalk if you walked by it. I'm also going to pick up this copy of Tecmo Baseball because it's only $2, and I'm going to pair it with that Xbox copy of Constantine. Pretty much this is the same stuff as we saw last time. There's nothing really new here, but there's this copy of Sneaky Snakes here, which I've never heard of, but it's a Trade West game, so I'm going to grab it because it's $5 also, and I'm going to pair it with Jimmy Connor's. And don't get tricked, that Power Rangers game on the Game Boy is garbage. The Super Nintendo one is much better. And then there's a copy of Claymates and Paperboy 2 that I need that I'll grab at some point. And here's the stuff I ended up picking up there. This is Tecmo Baseball. Now this game isn't really worth much. You can see it was only $2 here. So I just paired it up with Constantine and it came down to $1. And this game is in pretty much immaculate shape. The only cleaning that even needs to be done here is to have the stickers peeled off if you want to. It doesn't look like anyone even played this game. And I do think it's hilarious that they tried to make it seem like this game was officially licensed by Major League Baseball, even though it isn't, but they wanted to use it as a selling point. Tecmo Baseball was developed and published by Tecmo and released in 1989 exclusively for the Nintendo Entertainment System, exclusively in North America. Despite boasting that the game allows you to choose from 14 different Major League teams and use a total of 280 players, the game is not actually officially licensed by the MLB. There are two divisions to choose from, the National Division and the American Division, both containing 7 teams each. Due to the lack of license, all of the teams are named only by where they are located, like Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, and Boston. Although the in-game players are based on real people, they have been given different names. You are able to play single-player, 2-player, or watch 2 computer-controlled teams play each other. And here's Constantine. Now this is the game that is based off of the movie, which is based off of the comic book, which actually comes from another comic book. This is the movie that starred Keanu Reeves, came out in 2005. I did see it. I don't remember hating it or loving it. I do want to see it again. Now we're going to swap the case on this because it did come in a Blockbuster rental case, but luckily it actually had its manual in it. And for $1 on this, and the disc is in pretty nice shape, you cannot really go wrong with it. Luckily they didn't shove the manual in and crinkle it in because the Blockbuster cases actually don't have enough room for a manual. They're all too small. The only manual that it fits, I believe, is the GameCube one. Now, I've never played this game, and unfortunately I don't have an Xbox here, so I can't show any footage, but if you guys want to know what this game is about and you want me to do a little review on it, I will haul my Xbox over here and I will make a review on it. And you have to respect the developers for going all out and making it an M-rated game that was a tie-in to an R-rated movie, just like the Sopranos game that was just balls out and M-rated. Both of them could have gone T to attract more people, and they didn't. They stayed true and went rated M. And then here is Konami NFL Football. Now you didn't see this in the video because it was right next to the cash register where the handheld stuff was, and there was no sticker on this how much it cost, so I asked the guy how much this game was, and he said it's actually not in our system, that's why it doesn't have a tag, so I'll just throw it in for free. And I did not have this game, and it is a Konami game, so I was absolutely willing to take it for free. NFL Football was developed and published by Konami and released in 1990 for the Game Boy. The game is an American football simulator that is officially licensed by the NFL. Because it is officially licensed, all 28 teams as of the 1990 season are playable. Not only are you able to play against the computer, but you can also play against a friend using a link cable. While NFL Football is the first American football game ever released for the Game Boy, it is still regarded negatively. The game is primitive, slow, and the teams do not have individual stats. In 1993, Konami released an updated version of the game for the Super Nintendo. This release had many more features that allowed for a much better football game experience. It also sponsored a giveaway for a trip to the 1994 Pro Bowl in Hawaii. And here's Sneaky Snakes. This is actually a PAL version of the game. You can see it says UKV in the top left, and in the bottom right, the Nintendo seal of quality is actually circular instead of oval. And the card itself is in great shape, but the label has been ripped. Now, there's nothing we can do about that, as I've said in earlier episodes, but all we're going to do is try to clean it up the best we can. And here's Jimmy Connor's. This game is in fine shape. It is an American version of the game. Now, on the back, you can see that the previous price tag on here was also $5. This game was probably priced years ago, and they've just never gone back to reprice it. The thing about games like this is they fly under everyone's radar. This would never stick out as a game that was worth money or that people were searching for. So we're just going to take these apart and clean them up the best that we can. Here is that cleaned up copy of Sneaky Snakes. Now I was able to get that piece of masking tape off, but there was a reason that it was on there to begin with. As you can see, the bottom rip is kind of accordioned. It's because it gets caught every time it gets put in or pulled out of a Game Boy, but it did clean up fine. I mean, there's no fixing that label damage. And Sneaky Snakes is a game that I never heard of, which is weird because not only was this published by Trade West, but it was made by Rare. Sneaky Snakes was developed by Rare, published by Trade West, and released in 1991 exclusively for the Game Boy. The game features two snakes named Genghis and Attila who are out to save Sonia Snake. In each of the 16 levels, you must find and eat enough pellets to tip the scale at the end of the stage and open the exit door. Despite having two different snakes, it is a direct follow-up to the 1990 NES game Snake Rattle and Roll. Although both games operate with the same mechanics, Sneaky Snakes change from an isometric perspective to a side-scrolling one. It can also be played with two players via a link cable. And finally for the video, here is Jimmy Connor's Tennis, and like I was saying before, this is one of the more sought after games for the system. It must be due to a low print run due to poor sales because this game didn't come out anywhere near the end of the life cycle of the Game Boy. But it's one that everyone is looking for. Jimmy Connor's Tennis was published by Ubisoft and released between 1992 and 1993 for the Super Nintendo, Nintendo Entertainment System, Game Boy, and Atari Lynx. The game is a tennis simulator that features Jimmy Connors, who was ranked as the world #1 tennis player multiple times over his long career. As Jimmy Connors, you can practice or play a tournament on grass, clay, or hard court against the computer or a friend via the link cable. Although the game is very basic with lackluster AI, the character animations are quite fluid. Well, that's all the stuff I picked up over the past couple weeks. What have you found? Thank you for watching, and as always, stay nerdy.
Getting your nerd on, getting your nerd on, getting your nerd on.
I got a raging nerd on.